Reviewing old shooters can really be a challenge, especially those that came out for the PS2 and original Xbox. A lot of these games didn't really have aspirations that went beyond making a profit, and developers were still very much trying to come to grips with how to make first-person shooters work well on consoles. Games had certainly managed to do it, but most of them were still flailing around in the dark. But there are some gems from this era, some of which don't get nearly as much attention as others. So this week, I'm looking at a game that I remember quite fondly from those days, Darkwatch. Now, this game does share some of the issues I talked about earlier. The controls are really weirdly mapped, enemy variety is pretty low, and the shooting in general feels really samey. There are also some high points. For the time, the game's story is surprisingly well constructed. It's not necessarily well executed, but there's a lot here that you wouldn't have seen in a shooter at the time, especially when it comes to its moral choice system. Now, to be sure, these moral choices are of a completely binary nature, completely opposite ends of the spectrum. You can either choose to brutally murder people or save them. There's absolutely zero middle ground. You're basically just choosing which ending you want once you finish the game. It's interesting to see in a shooter at the time, but these days, not so revolutionary. The part of Darkwatch that does still hold up today, and the part I was most surprised by, is how fun it is to play at times. Its core mechanics aren't really anything special, but it makes up for that in a lot of instances with its unrelenting pace. There are places where it really nails the hectic shooter vibe, the feeling of a true old-school shooter. More than anything, it makes me wish I could play it with a keyboard and mouse to really enjoy the speed. But those moments of awesome arena combat are mixed in with a bunch of levels that are absolute slogs. And there are times when Darkwatch is a hell of a lot of fun, evoking serious Sam on a very core level, but it throws away that breakneck pace in favor of fading in and out of boring exposition with its hilariously binary moral choices, and slapping you in the face with objectives that you could have figured out yourself in about as much time as they took to show you it. There's a really great game buried here, or at least the potential of one, but it never really manages to achieve what it's capable of. When this game is at its fastest and its most hectic, it's a lot of fun, but it takes a lot of time in the valleys of Darkwatch to reach its peaks. Thankfully, unlike a lot of shooters from the era, Darkwatch isn't unnecessarily long, clocking in at about 6 hours, and that certainly helps make it quite a bit easier to recommend. I feel like Darkwatch is worth taking a look at for shooter fans, especially in a historical sense. This game took the shooter to places it never really went back then. Now, it did that at what was an unacceptable price at the time, sacrificing quality in some gameplay areas for minor improvements in narrative choice, but it does a great job of demonstrating the middle step between the early shooter and what we expect now. Every Monday, I look at a game that's at least 10 years old, what I would consider to be retro, and I see if it's held up today, if it's still worth playing now. If you like that idea, be sure to subscribe so you can see the latest videos. If you like this video in particular, be sure to hit that like button, and thanks for watching.